Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and we have a terrific show for you today. I'm very, very excited about our guest, and I just want to start by saying the intro is all about money and your relationship with money. Today's show is very much about one of the things that I think limit-free life is really about, which is purpose. And finding your purpose, traveling a career path and journey that helps you to find your purpose and use your gifts and talents to share your best self with the world. And in doing so, to maintain a good relationship with money, but one that allows you to live life the way you choose and in a way that you think is most meaningful. So with that, I'm going to bring on a really fabulous guest today. We have Genevieve Piturro, and she is all about purpose. She was a successful television marketing executive until she dramatically changed the direction of her life. She found her true purpose when a sudden inner voice challenged her life as she knew it. In 2001, she founded the hugely successful national nonprofit Pajama Program. When a 6-year-old girl's question changed her life forever, and she jumped off the corporate ladder. This year, the program celebrates its 21st anniversary, having delivered more than 7 million magical gifts of new pajamas and new books to children through their 63 chapters across the U.S. Genevieve is now a professional speaker and purpose consultant. She created the Purpose Acer Business Training Program to help business leaders understand how vital purpose is to a team and the bottom line. Her first book, sharing life and leadership lessons she learned through her Pajama Program journey, is an Amazon bestseller and the 2021 first place winner in the inspiration category of both the National Indie Excellence Book Awards and the New York City Big Book Award. The book Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, How to Transform Your Life, Embrace the Human Connection, and Lead with Meaning, debuted during the COVID shutdown to rave reviews. The book's message dovetails perfectly with our nation's growing interest in finding purpose. Her TED Talk, One Idea plus the Human Connection equals 7 million pajamas, debuted at the same time. Genevieve has been interviewed on and in many local and national media, including Hallmark's Home and Family, The Huckabee Show, Oprah, Today, Good Morning America, The Early Show, CNN, Fox and Friends, O Magazine, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and Parenting Magazine. Genevieve rang the NASDAQ stock market opening bell in 2016, and she's been the recipient of many local and national awards as she inspires others to listen to their heart voice in pursuing their passions. She lives in Irvington, New York with her husband, and Genevieve, welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. So nice to be here.
So nice to have you. I am honored to have you here. This is such a treat. So I'm so excited for you to share your journey, how this happened. You know, we talk a lot here on the show about career paths and career transitions, and you made a big one for just great reasons. So would you just share some of your backstory with us?
Sure. I never thought I'd be where I am today. I wanted to be Mary Tyler Moore. I was climbing that corporate ladder, single girl. My family was really Italian, traditional Italian. My dad came from Italy off the boat, age 15, with his father. His father wanted his son to have an American life and the opportunities. And my dad and mom met in New York, got married, and I'm the first of their 4 children. So there was a lot of expectation for me to follow in that traditional lifestyle and, you know, get married and have kids and all of that. But that really wasn't for me. I wanted to be that corporate girl. You know, I had my eye on Manhattan and in the entertainment business, and I went for it. And 12 years in, a very crazy workaholic single life, which I really liked at the time. It's what I always wanted. I was alone in my apartment, and I heard a voice come from here inside me that I'd never heard before. And it asked me a question. It asked me, If this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? Mm. And that really shook me. First, I didn't know where that voice was. I'm used to the head voice, like we all are, right? But this was a really serious question. And the thing was, I knew right away, I got it, and I realized, no, I'm alone. I'm busy. I have friends, but everybody's eyes on that, that money ball and that top office. I'm going to be alone in 30 years if that's what I care about. Mm. And that answer was also nothing I had ever thought about. But when I stopped, I realized that there might have been something in that traditional upbringing that I had that I missed, and that was probably children. Mm-hmm. So I called police stations because I knew about that there were children who were taken from, really upsetting and traumatic home lives to shelters and for safety reasons, and that they were hurt. And I started to visit shelters and read to the children at night. And that was the most grounded I had felt with another human being. They were 5, 6, 7 years old in an emergency shelter, but there was something that bonded us. Yeah. And it was eye-opening.
Oh, I love that. I love that story. I love the question as a coach. I love good questions, and that question of, how will I feel in 30 years? That is such a good one. I think everyone should write that down and ask themselves once in a while. So that was excellent. And what a unique, inspiration on your part to find that option for yourself. I think that's really interesting too, because I think sometimes people rack their brains around, how can I help in the world? And that was such a beautiful way that you found. So,
well, I never set out to find anything. I just followed that my heart in the moment and went to visit the shelters. What happened from that moment on unfolded in such an incredible, organic and miraculous way that here we are today talking about this and not talking about the shattering the corporate ceiling or anything. It's just when I met those children and sat on the floor in my business suit reading stories to them and just feeling connected, and they were so hurt and silent or crying through it because they didn't know what they were doing there. They were literally pulled out of wherever they were. It was not a good situation, but to them, this was worse. Mm-hmm. And seeing how they would sleep, weeks later when I return every week or maybe twice a week, different kids. Right. And when I saw they were sleeping in their clothes, I had a rush of memories from my childhood with my mom sitting at the side of my bed. And I know she did it with my sister in the same room and my brothers in their room. The laughing and the stories and the snacks and the hugs and the kisses. And we were wearing pajamas, of course. All kids wear pajamas to sleep, but they don't. And these children didn't. And I brought pajamas one week because I just thought, at least can they wear something soft and not the clothes they've been wearing for days. Right. And when I started handing them out, there was a little girl who was so afraid of me, of a stranger, of taking anything from me. And she just kept shaking her head, no, no, no. And, she tried to stand away. And finally, when she saw the other kids taking them and she wanted to watch me give them, I went back over to her and I tried again. And that's when this little girl just looked at me so lost and afraid. And I asked her if she would take her pajamas, please, it'd be so nice and comfortable. And that's when she asked me quietly, what are pajamas? Oh. And Michelle, that was it. That was the moment that I really lost interest and all the enthusiasm I had for my career and poured it into how many of these children are there that I can get to with a pair of pajamas.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah. I feel like so much of this journey was sort of intuitive. These thoughts coming to you in the moment when something would happen and you running with that intuition that you were having, which I think a lot of people, especially busy corporate people who are very ambitious and you know, doing what they do best, working, sometimes are not tapping into their intuition at all. And I think, you know, it's such an important voice. It's such an important way to find your path by listening to it.
Right. It's our heart voice. And I was one of those women for 12, 13 years, one of those people. I cared about climbing the corporate ladder. That's what was filling my heart, but it wasn't really my heart it was filling, you know. Yeah. And all of a sudden I felt what it felt like to have your heart full.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful example for people, because I think ultimately when people get to a point in their career, they're looking for that, you know. And today I think more people are looking for that who haven't even necessarily gotten to where they originally thought they would try to get to. And that's a lot of what this great resignation, or, you know, they've changed the name of it now, but it's what it's about. It's about wanting to feel something in your heart for what you're waking up and doing every day. So,
right. One of my most popular master classes is finding meaning in your chapter 2.
Beautiful. Yeah. And do you want to give us just a little summary of how to find meaning in your chapter 2?
Yes, it's all about your heart voice. It's really letting go of the chatter in your head and really taking time. And I teach, you know, you need 90 minutes. If you want to do this, one 90-minute session with yourself, and you will discover more than you could imagine. If you give yourself 90 minutes, and I say you could have a glass of wine, you could have a cup of tea, you could have a pizza, you could have whatever you want, as long as it's you alone and it's quiet time and a pad and a paper. And if you ask and you listen to your heart and you just quiet your mind, you will discover so many things that you love to do. And in there is something that you can make a living through. You can slide or you can jump, but you have to bring that into your life if you want the rest of your life to have more meaning than it does.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. You can slide or you can jump, because people think it's an either or. Like if I don't, you know, jump and burn the lifeboats or whatever the phrase is, I can't do it. But it's very much an individual choice on that one, I think. So I like that you open that up for people.
Yeah. Some of us have that I have that jump gene. I keep doing it. I don't know why, but some of us do. And some of us don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it works both ways. But I love that. So, so this is a masterclass that you offer?
Yes, over the pandemic, since I couldn't speak in person, somebody asked me to do a few master classes, and I ended up with 12, and that's the most popular one. It's popular even before the pandemic. People were thinking, you know, after 10, 20 years in a career and making good money or struggling, it didn't matter. If there wasn't meaning in it, there was that aha moment for people. And yes, like you said, even more so now.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. So maybe at the end of the show, we'll let people know how they can access that. That would be, that'd be great. So let's talk about your career journey then. I mean, there must have been some, you know, decision-making process you went through before you took a leap to leave. And how was that? And
it was crazy, because I didn't know what this emotional, you know, wave was that was just growing, and it was just turning my life upside down. It really was 100% emotional. You know, I'm not a saver. I know we're on a money show. I shouldn't say this, but I never was.
Well, that's good that you're saying it. A lot of people out there listening are also not savers. So
okay. And I had, you know, so many children I saw, and then of course got calls from the people who were the staff at these shelters telling their friends who were staff at other shelters. So I was getting calls and lists, and I was trying to keep my job. And, you know, I kept everything I was doing with the pajamas a secret, because I didn't know what it was yet, you know, except I was doing this. And so I was just buying and racking up, you know, credit cards and things and running all over town. So I had two lives. You know, I always feel like I know what it's like if you're having an affair. You think you got it all covered until kaboom, you know, something happens, and people find out if you don't gently tell them. And but I couldn't. I mean, I didn't know how to say to someone, I'm thinking of quitting my fabulous career and I have a mortgage and I'm going to just give pajamas to children in shelters. And I rehearsed it in my mind and it just sounded ridiculous. So I didn't tell anyone for a very long time. I just tried to juggle. I'd take a suitcase full of pajamas to work and say I was going away for the weekend, and wow, I'd have to leave early and I'd go to the sales. So it was really hard, but I only had my income.
Right.
And so it was so hard to imagine how I could do this, how I could pay bills. And, you know, I didn't know what a 501c3 was. I didn't know what it meant. I thought you can't make a living, you know, doing this. You can't even make a living if you're in the nonprofit world. You know, I was wrong. Of course you can. It's different. It's okay. But there was so much I didn't know, and it was day by day. And until I got the courage to tell people, and until I got the courage to ask for help, I was just saying a prayer and a step, a prayer and a step.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. And, you know, it's great that you persevered, because there is a lot of, it had to be uncomfortable to actually make that leap, I would think. Maybe not.
It was scary, but somebody said the treasure you want is in the darkest cave. And, you know, sometimes that's true, but also I think when you're following your heart voice and you're on purpose, mysterious universal help comes to you. And, you know, it's just a sort of a law of nature, I think, when you're not bucking what you're supposed to be doing. You know, we all have a purpose, and I didn't know that. I know that now.
I love that. I love what you said. I agree with you. I think the universe somehow shows up and supports you when you're doing things like that. My daughter can get pretty mad at me for saying those things, but I think somewhere in the back of her mind, it's storing. Maybe she'll use it someday. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. So that's a great message as well. And so did you start the nonprofit after you quit, or did you try to do these things simultaneously?
Simultaneously. What happened was a woman called. I got to a point where friends and family knew that I was bringing pajamas to children. And so they would bring them to me or give me a few bucks to go shopping, and I'd take, you know, the money and I'd buy pajamas and then go to the shelters at night. There was a call from a woman at a national magazine who said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, I write for so-and-so. Can I write a little article? Are you the lady that's handing out pajamas in Harlem?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess it's me." So she wrote a very small article. I'm talking small. And I didn't realize that those who subscribed back then got the magazine before it was on the newsstand. So here I am waiting for 10 more days till it comes out on the newsstand to get my copy. And I return to my apartment and there are thousands of boxes and packages showing up. And actually the doormen are yelling at me because they've been arriving the first day and there's no room in the cellar where they have our storage area. And I didn't know what they were talking about, but they were yelling at me. Now, meanwhile, I had just met a great man and we got married. I had met him when I was thinking about all of this. And actually, when I confided in him that I was doing this, I said, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I knew I had to tell him. He thought I was going to be, you know, a partner in career, you know, money making. So I told him, and he said, "I think you should go for it." So he didn't know what he was getting into. And when all those boxes showed up, they came up to our foreheads in what I owned the one bedroom at the time. And we couldn't even see each other. And I still didn't know what was going on. I opened the boxes and that's when I read the letters. Saw your article, just got the parenting magazine. Oh my goodness, here's $5, here's pajamas, here's a check. And I was opening them crying, and he was crying too. It was just unbelievable shock and so beautiful, the outpouring of love. And then there was one that came from a company that said, if you will send us your 501c3, we'd like to give you a grant. And I looked at my new husband and I said, what is this thing? 501 parentheses with a C in it and a number 3. I had no idea.
Oh.
And looking at those thousands of boxes, I have pictures. I said, this is a responsibility. This is not something that I'm doing as fast as I can. These people are counting on me, and there is support. They want to help me. So that's when I had to really make those scarier decisions.
Wow, I love that. I love the fact that you met a man right then who was so supportive as well.
Yeah, see the universe.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing. So,
and I needed a car, and he had one.
Oh, that's so great. So yeah, and I guess the purpose idea was really kind of solidified with all that great feedback from the results of that article. So
yes,
that helps too. You're on the right path, I think then. And okay, so then you went ahead and started the nonprofit officially, correct?
Yes, sent in all the paperwork. You have to wait. I didn't know how to fill out the paperwork. I had to beg, attorneys. And finally someone said, okay, it's a nice thing, I'll help you. And, it's a waiting game. It was back then. And then we got our 501c3 a few months later, and then it was official. Then I could tell people that, we were okay by the government. We had a piece of paper. I showed them, and we were legit.
Yeah. Okay. That's such a beautiful story. So one of the things that I really like that you're talking about is this was a new area for you. So you had to come into it, oftentimes it's the idea that we don't know what we don't know is so important. And so, you had some assumptions about what being part of a nonprofit would mean financially and everything else. Turned out they weren't all correct. And then you had to just learn, which I think sometimes people feel if they don't already know something, then they can't get into it. And I kind of love the fact that you didn't know about this, but you figured it out. And just a good illustration of how that can work. So,
one foot in front of the other. I'm not kidding when I say I prayed and I, I wished, and I did as much research as I can. And the real key was opening up to tell people and ask for help, because none of us like to do that. I don't know anybody who says, oh, I ask for help all the time. I've never had a problem, never, not once. I just put myself out there, and that wasn't me. I was afraid. I was embarrassed to ask for help because I wasn't sure people would laugh at me. But as soon as I started asking for help, and people saw the support, and people felt that little girl, whenever I told the story, I felt like I was channeling her. They got it. So many people felt what I felt, that this is awful. This is beyond unacceptable. I can help. This is a small thing. People wanted to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you get any, because oftentimes when people do make a transition like that, especially when, it sounds kind of awful, but especially one where they're giving up some financial, kind of an abundant job or whatever, people tend to think, oh my gosh, what are you doing? That's crazy. Just do it in your spare time or whatever. Did you get any of that or not so much?
Yes. And I put one story in my book. I did. A friend, I thought, okay, I have to test the waters here. Let me test the waters by telling somebody who I know, but not too, not in my career path. So she wouldn't be telling my bosses, but somebody who was a career girl too. And I had arranged to have a drink with her, and I was all set. I rehearsed, even though I just kept saying it sounds ridiculous. And after a glass of wine, I blurted it out. And she did look at me like I had 3 heads and say, what? You've worked so hard. What are you talking about? How, you're going to do this like instead of your job? Can't you do it on the weekends? You're not saving their lives. What do you think it's really going to do? And how are you going to pay your mortgage? And it was like being shot at, and I just kept, and I had no answers. That was the thing. And that's what frightened me. I didn't have any answers. And I clammed up again after that meeting, because I couldn't take another another round of those types of bullets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. But I do think that's something to expect from people. And it says a lot about people's relationship with money, because for a lot of people, the instant reaction is, oh my gosh, you're going to have money troubles, and that's going to be,
Yes.
that's above everything else. And I think it's a choice to put finding that purpose or living that purpose maybe in front of the immediate money situation. It doesn't mean the money situation can't, recover and be better than
Right.
ever. I've known a lot of people who've transitioned, and in the transition, they actually made more money than they ever did before or thought they could. But but there is that fear. So, and a lot of it
Well,
comes from other people's opinions and ideas.
it does. And you have to, and I at the end of every chapter, I put heart of the matter lessons. And one of them was, you need your cheerleaders before you go out there naked. You need to know who's going to be there if you want to cry on someone's shoulder that night. And I didn't do it that way. I did it, the opposite. So I learned, and I tell people, get just a few cheerleaders lined up before you go out to the world.
Yeah. No, that's great. And did you take any kind of financial precautions? I mean, did you do anything on the financial end to kind of make sure that maybe you would have some cushion or something, anything to just prepare that way?
No, I really didn't. And that's shame on me, because like I said, I wasn't a saver, and I kept thinking it's going to be okay. I'll figure it out as I go. And I did. It was one step at a time. And I racked up, credit card bills. And again, I'm very honest in my book. My new husband, who didn't have a banking job, he was a working actor, and some months were better than other months. And it was not stable, and it was not comfortable. And I was selfish a lot of the time, because I continued my journey with buying as much as I wanted of the pajamas and the books. And, I stopped buying dresses for me, and I stopped buying suits for me, but I didn't stop spending the money. And I just kept thinking, it'll come, something will break, something will help. It did, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have a hard time or put pressure on others, because I did.
Right. And thank you for that honesty. I mean, that's important, and it did work out. And so, while it's nice to have, the ducks in a row before you do something like this, it's doesn't always work out. And, but it's a long game. So, it's worked out in the longer term. But so again, not to harp on money, but at some point you needed to fundraise, I would imagine.
Yes, we did. And, I don't know anybody who says from day one, I love fundraising. I maybe the same people who say I can talk to anybody can say I can ask money from anybody. I couldn't. I had to learn how to fundraise, how to ask for money. And then my husband said something interesting. He said, you're acting like you're asking them for money for you to buy a fur coat. He said, what do you, of course, ran on and on about all the kids and everything. He said, that's what you tell people. That's what it's for. They're going to get it. So when I started to let go of the embarrassment or the awkwardness, and I just told them stories about these children, it was easier, and they could come with me and meet the children. So it was very emotional. My fundraising was always very emotional. It wasn't full of numbers and stats.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a part of things, especially more so now than then, but that's not what came easily to me. The stories was that's how I raised the money.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings up a great point that, if you care about something and you have a big vision and a purpose, sharing that with people is really how you build, whether that's a nonprofit or a business. If you have an amazing vision for your business, your team, your customers, clients, whoever should all be aware of that. Because what you said about emotion, that's the driver for most things. I mean, whether it's money, we don't, that's the whole point of the show, really, is that was the whole point of why I got into this, because we rarely do all the things we know we should do not because we can't or we don't know what they are, but because our emotions get in the way. We act emotionally. So in all things, really. So it's important to respect these emotions, I think. And,
Yeah. I mean, it was in some kind of one of the older rom-coms where they said everything's personal.
Yeah.
And it really is. And that's why I created the Purpose Acer program for businesses, because it's about time we got personal. I'm not saying personal where it's not comfortable. I'm saying caring about people and sharing the stories, especially now. That's what people want after and through the pandemic. We've all been changed, some more than others. Some have had horrific things happen. Some people have done well, but it's about sharing the stories and coming out the other end with more meaning for the reason you show up for somebody else, or show up for somebody else's purpose, or start something that means something for you. There's so much that's changing now. And like you said, everybody's looking for purpose. And I think that's a good thing.
I think it's a great thing. And I think that this whole notion of keeping, because Mary Tyler Moore was one of my idols too. So we grew up in the same era, and business was very impersonal, especially for women starting out in corporate, decades ago. You left everything personal at the door when you walked into that office. And so, that didn't work for a lot of reasons. And so I do think bringing feeling and emotion, and I mean, not to a ridiculous point, but, to we're people. Businesses are full of human beings. And so, to pretend you're not one while you're at work is it's kind of odd.
That's exactly right. You're a robot.
Yeah, exactly. So you've grown this. Do you want to just talk about where your beautiful endeavor is now? Because it's quite large.
Sure. Yes, it's 21 years old. I'm the founder, and I was the executive director for almost 20 years. And I always knew, I knew as we were growing that my best strength was what I mentioned before, is telling the story. And I realized that it was inspiring and supporting the adults who were part of Pajama Program. Some of the supporters and the volunteers were asking me about purpose and if I could mentor them or help them. And they would say, I'm doing this in banking, but I really always wanted to do this. And it was just amazing how many people really had those hidden purposes, that they felt comfortable telling me because they heard my story and they were part of this beautiful purpose too. So I wanted to continue that as my part 2 purpose. So I asked the board, I told them what I wanted to do, write my book and do more of the speaking and consulting with businesses and individuals. So we hired a terrific executive director a couple of years ago, and she was a board president, and she's an attorney. So as Pajama Program grew, it became more about, for me, paperwork and budgets and strategic planning, and less about me telling the story and sharing purpose and things like that, and it really was a good fit for her. And I could still be the founder, and I could still talk about how getting to purpose is important and how you listen to your heart voice and it can blossom into something that others can share and benefit in the community and more. So 21 years now, 63 chapters around the US, and we have 2 reading centers, New York and in Atlanta. And we've reached 7 million new pajamas and new books, more than that now, across the country. So it's all about bedtime and that comfort and that security and that routine that even caregivers sometimes who are caring for these children don't have a lot of time for. And it's how much bedtime means for the child in the morning and to have a good day.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And that's a lot of growth. So I feel like, you've scaled this as they probably don't say in the nonprofit world, but that's what you've done. And so, what were some of maybe the harder lessons in taking it from very small to very large?
Well, I think, when you get to a certain point, you need professionals. I was winging it in the early days. I wrote my 5-year plan literally with a pen on a pad, made 5, columns. Year 1, this is what I want to. And clearly, when you become a 501c3, or even when you see you're going in that direction, you need professional help. You need the CPAs who are versed in nonprofit. You need the attorneys who know the nonprofit law. You need those people around you. It's a business. It's a business. You can scale it. You have to treat it that way, and you are really watched, and we should be. So that was something that I had to grow into and find the right people that could help take us where we needed to go.
Yeah, that's so important. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Really important.
I was in marketing. I got to do fun ideas.
Yeah.
and now I had to work with, CPAs and attorneys.
And were you able, because I always love transferable skills, were you able to use your marketing in a similar way? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, short and sweet, pictures, stories. I have an eye for the picture. No, it was my baby. I always say Pajama Program is my baby. So I knew instinctively how to tell the story, and I knew what the pictures were going to do, and which picture. You could show me 100 pictures, I could tell you the one. That's all the creative stuff I learned.
Yeah, I wish I knew that. I would never know which picture.
To have the other skills.
No, that's great. That is great. And so where do you have a vision, for the next few years? What are you hoping for?
Well, for Pajama Program, I know that Jamie, the executive director, and team will take it to new lengths. Since the pandemic, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think our reading centers will open again, and we'll go, on to, grow every year. And for me, I want to continue to speak and to work with businesses to come together, leaders and the employers, employees, and find that culture again that is meaningful for both sides. The leaders who have a purpose, and the employees who want to feel like they're really making a difference when they show up, and that it's filling their heart too. And just inspiring people who want to make a change and are afraid. I can tell them lots of things that happened to me, and I would bet half those things would not happen to other people.
Well, different things will happen to them most likely, but
at least they'll have another shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. What are some of the things that you're hearing from these leaders that when you come in and talk about purpose with them, is there anything that maybe shows up repeatedly, or is it just interesting?
Well, I'm fortunate to know a lot of leaders who've always cared about their employees and who've taken the time to build a culture because they've listened. And so they have very loyal employees. And I also know some who are the bosses, like the bosses I had. They were bosses. You do it. You don't. Doesn't matter if you love it. Doesn't matter if you get it. It doesn't matter if you feel it. And if you have an idea, write it down and put it in the box. So I've had to learn how to be. When I started hiring at Pajama Program, I had a different kind of leadership style because it was heartfelt, and I wanted people around who were the same heartfelt people. So I grew something that was different than a boss relationship, than that I do it because I said so culture. So I think it's nice to know and to see that true leaders now are emerging, men and women. Finally, more women are emerging to say there is room here to bring your whole self to work. There's room here to ask what you care about. There's room to say, how can we talk about the purpose we have? How can we get involved in the community more? How can we include you? There's so much more to talk about, and there's so much more to listen for, and more questions and more sharing. And I see that happening. It's not quite there, but we're figuring it out. So I'm hoping to assist and support in any way I can during this sort of transition of leadership style.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. It's really interesting what's happening in companies today, and if it's so important for companies to get on board and build these cultures that people can relate to and feel good about being part of. So, and do you see more openness uh, on the part of leaders to do that and to spend the time that they need to spend on better communication and engaging people in that way?
I think so. I think those who did it well are doing it even better. I still think there's a learning curve. I think that there are a lot of leaders who find themselves in an uncomfortable position because of the virtual world of the last 2 years, and
Mm-hmm.
people changed their expectation that they have to be in the office every day, and it is different. I'm a people person. I like to be in front of people. I like to be in an atmosphere where I can collaborate in person. So I get the value of that. And I'm not somebody who wants to work remote, but some people are, and we need to find a way to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's going to be all the money, all the profit you're making is going to be on retraining and retention.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, a difficult place. We're going to find ourselves in a difficult place. But yes, I think people are learning, whether they want to or not, that it has to be an open conversation now.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. So do you get any time to read to the children at this point?
Well, sadly, for the 2 years of the pandemic, our reading centers have been closed. But we're hoping they're opening very soon, and that's when the children can come in and read with our volunteers and get a pair of pajamas to take back with them. Over the last 2 years, everything's been shipped the way it usually is, just without meeting the children in person.
Got it.
At our reading centers. But some of our chapters do that, and people still drop pajamas off at my doorstep,
Aw.
which is always sweet. And you never get used to seeing the cutest little
Yeah.
pajamas in size 5 and 7.
Well, with that, can you help listeners learn how they can participate, send pajamas and donations, be part of it in some way?
Sure. Well, Pajama Program, we serve children infant to 18, and we don't want to forget the teens. We have special place in our hearts for the teenagers. And everything Pajama Program is on pajamaprogram.org, O-R-G. And you can find me on my website and introduce yourself, and I can always make an introduction and fill you in a little bit on my work and Pajama Program. So if it's strictly Pajama Program, pajamaprogram.org. If you have a question for me or any interest, I'm GenevievePiturro.com.
Wonderful. And for your leadership programs, they can find those
All there.
Okay.
Yep. And connect with me there.
Can we go back to your masterclass? Because is that on masterclass or is that somewhere
No,
else?
that's my masterclass.
Okay,
No.
got it.
It's just what I called the 12 that I did. Now I do them in person too. And they're for groups. There's individual purpose coaching, but those are generally for groups. And there are 12 different topics, and they're all about purpose and listening to your heart voice and fear and respect and trust and all things starting something new that's meaningful.
And those you can find on your website.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at those. I never can get enough of helping people find their purpose or learning more myself about how people might do that. It's a perpetual question. I don't know my purpose.
Yes.
I don't know how to find it. So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, if you go to my blog on my website, a couple of blogs ago, there's a little bit of there's a blog on how to use those 90 minutes step by step.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I have loved talking to you and can't wait to get more involved myself. And I just really appreciate the time. You have a lot going on. You're very busy. And it, again, is an honor to have spent the last 45 minutes with you. So thank you.
Oh, you too. And I know how busy you are. So thank you for the invitation, Michelle.
Yeah, no, this is great. So listeners, thank you for being here with us at ubngo.com. And you will find this podcast on all the podcast platforms and also the Limit Free Life YouTube channel, Facebook page will be out there. I would love for you to watch the show, subscribe to the Money and You show, leave us some reviews, get involved with Genevieve. We try to bring you wonderful guests like we did today and really enlighten you in a lot of areas: career transition, business growth, and of course, money and your relationship with money. So please join us. We air from ubngo.com on Monday nights at 7. And then after that, we're all over the place with the podcast. So anyway, have a great week and make your own career journey if you need to right now. Find your purpose and your passion and ask yourself that amazing question that Genevieve brought up, which is, if I'm doing this in 30 years, how am I going to feel? I don't know if that was the exact question, Genevieve, but close. So, okay. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.